You're stuck. You've analyzed the problem from every angle. You've brainstormed until your mind feels raw. You've made lists that stretch across pages, but all you have are the same old, tired ideas circulating like stale air in a closed room. You feel like you're just rearranging furniture in a space that's become too small, when what you desperately need is a door to a whole new world, a breakthrough that transcends the limits of your current thinking. What if that door actually exists, waiting silently for you to discover it, and there's a specific key that can unlock it? The pain you're experiencing right now is the suffocating feeling of being limited by your own intellect and experience, trapped within the boundaries of what you already know. You've been taught to believe that genius is a rare gift bestowed upon a chosen few at birth, and that you are not one of them. This belief has become your prison, keeping you from accessing a power that has always been yours. Most people spend their entire lives operating exclusively through what Napoleon Hill called their synthetic imagination, that faculty of mind that merely rearranges old concepts, reshuffles existing ideas, and recombines familiar elements into slightly different patterns. It's like playing with the same set of building blocks, creating different structures, but never transcending the limitations of the blocks themselves. But Napoleon Hill, after 20 years of studying the most successful individuals in history, revealed something extraordinary. The capstone of his entire philosophy, the ultimate source of all breakthrough ideas, and those flashes of genius that seem to come from nowhere, emerges from activating what he called the creative imagination, also known as the sixth sense. This is not some mystical gift reserved for the prophets and inventors of legend. It is a mental faculty, as real as your ability to see or hear, a receiving set built into the architecture of your mind that can be deliberately cultivated and strengthened. When you learn to activate this faculty, you connect your finite mind with what Hill called the infinite storehouse of new ideas, a vast reservoir of knowledge and inspiration that exists beyond the boundaries of your personal experience. This is where the solutions to impossible problems originate, where revolutionary inventions are born, where the ideas that change the course of human history first appear as whispers in the minds of those who have learned to listen. Napoleon Hill was not just another success philosopher peddling feel-good platitudes. He was the man Andrew Carnegie personally commissioned to decode the path to achievement, spending 2 decades interviewing over 500 of the most successful individuals of his era. What he discovered was not a collection of random tips, but a precise science of success, a system with definite laws and principles that anyone could follow. And at the very pinnacle of this system, after all the other principles had been mastered, stood the sixth sense, the crown jewel of human potential. This video will decode this final crowning step of Hill's system, revealing not just what it is, but how to activate it in your own life. You will learn the critical distinction between the two forms of imagination and understand why most people never progress beyond the limitations of synthetic thinking. More importantly, you will discover the specific conditions required to activate your sixth sense and begin receiving those flashes of inspiration that solve impossible problems and reveal opportunities invisible to the logical mind. But be warned, and this is crucial, this faculty cannot be forced or rushed. Trying to access it directly without laying the proper foundation is the single biggest mistake people make, and I will explain exactly why in part 3. The sixth sense is not a shortcut. It is the reward for those who have prepared their minds properly. Before we continue, I want you to comment below if you've ever had a sudden hunch that turned out to be correct, a moment when you knew something without knowing how you knew it. These experiences are glimpses of your sixth sense at work. The foundation of understanding begins with recognizing that you possess not one but 2 distinct forms of imagination, each operating according to different laws and serving different purposes in your mental machinery. The first, which Hill termed the synthetic imagination, is the faculty you're most familiar with, the one you've been using your entire life to solve problems and make decisions. This is your logical mind, your reasoning faculty, the part of you that takes existing ideas, concepts, memories, and plans, and rearranges them into new combinations. When you're planning your day, solving a math problem, or figuring out how to rearrange your living room, You're using your synthetic imagination. Think of the synthetic imagination as a master chef working in a kitchen stocked only with ingredients from past meals. The chef can create new dishes by combining these ingredients in novel ways, can experiment with different proportions and cooking methods, can even create something that tastes entirely different from anything served before. But ultimately, the chef is limited to the ingredients already in the pantry. No amount of creativity can produce an ingredient that isn't there. This is how most of us spend our entire lives thinking, recombining the elements of our past experience into new patterns, but never truly transcending the boundaries of what we already know. The synthetic imagination is powerful and essential. It's the faculty that allows you to learn from experience, to apply lessons from one situation to another, to build upon existing knowledge incrementally. Every time you solve a problem by remembering how you solved a similar problem before, every time you combine two existing ideas to create a hybrid solution, you're exercising this faculty. It's the workhorse of human intelligence, the foundation upon which civilization has been built, one logical step at a time. But there's a ceiling to what the synthetic imagination can achieve. It can optimize, refine, and recombine, but it cannot truly create something from nothing. It cannot leap beyond the boundaries of existing knowledge. It cannot access information you've never encountered or solutions that exist outside your frame of reference. This is where most people hit the wall, where they find themselves stuck despite their best efforts, recycling the same thoughts in increasingly desperate combinations. The second form of imagination, the creative imagination or sixth sense, operates according to entirely different principles. This is not a faculty that works with existing materials, it is a receiving apparatus, a mental antenna that picks up signals from what Hill called infinite intelligence. When this faculty is active, ideas don't emerge from the recombination of past experiences. They arrive fully formed, often in a flash, carrying with them a sense of rightness and completion that logical thinking rarely provides. The creative imagination is the source of what we call inspiration, those moments when a solution appears in your mind without any conscious effort to construct it. It's the faculty that was active when Einstein visualized riding on a beam of light, when Tesla saw his inventions complete in his mind's eye before ever building them, when great composers heard entire symphonies in a single moment of revelation. These were not products of logical deduction or systematic analysis. They were receptions from a source beyond the individual mind. Understanding this distinction is crucial because it explains why traditional problem-solving often fails when we need breakthrough thinking. You can't force the creative imagination to work through effort and analysis the way you can push the synthetic imagination to keep combining and recombining ideas. The creative imagination operates only under specific conditions, when the conscious mind is operating at a particular frequency, when the mental static has been cleared away. Hill discovered that this faculty exists in everyone, but remains dormant in most people throughout their entire lives. They never learn to activate it, never discover how to tune their mental receiver to pick up these broadcasts from infinite intelligence. They spend their lives believing that their synthetic imagination is all they have, that the limits of their personal experience are the limits of their potential. But this is like owning a radio, and never discovering it can do more than play the cassette tape that came with it. The creative imagination doesn't operate continuously like the synthetic imagination. It functions in flashes, in moments of reception when the conditions are right. These moments often come when the conscious mind is relaxed but alert, when the pressure of forced thinking has been released, when the mental frequency has been raised through proper preparation. This is why great ideas often come in the shower, during walks, or in that twilight state between waking and sleeping. What's remarkable about the creative imagination is that it seems to have access to information beyond what you consciously know. It can provide solutions that incorporate factors you haven't consciously considered, can reveal patterns you haven't consciously recognized, can suggest approaches that seem to come from outside your normal way of thinking. This isn't magic or mysticism. It's a natural faculty of mind that operates at a level below conscious awareness, processing information, and making connections in ways the logical mind cannot replicate. The relationship between these two forms of imagination is not competitive but complementary. The synthetic imagination prepares the ground, loading the mind with information, exploring the problem space, exhausting the logical possibilities. This preparation is essential. It creates the conditions under which the creative imagination can function. Then, when the logical mind has done all it can do, when it steps back and creates space, the creative imagination can deliver its insights. Many people make the mistake of trying to choose one form of imagination over the other, either grinding away endlessly with logic or sitting passively waiting for inspiration. But Hill's great insight was that mastery comes from understanding how to use both faculties in harmony, how to prepare with the synthetic imagination, and then receive through the creative imagination. This is the secret of genius, not the absence of logical thinking, but the transcendence of it. The tragedy is that our educational system trains only the synthetic imagination. We're taught to analyze, to deduce, to combine existing knowledge, but we're never taught how to activate our receiving apparatus, how to tune in to the broadcasts of infinite intelligence. We go through life like a person with a powerful radio, turning the volume knob over and over, never realizing there's a tuning dial that could open up entirely new stations. To truly grasp the profound difference between these two faculties of mind, consider this analogy that illuminates their distinct natures with crystal clarity. Your synthetic imagination is like your personal music collection. Every song you've ever downloaded, every album you've purchased, every playlist you've carefully curated over the years. You can play any song you already own, create new playlists by combining tracks in different sequences, even use audio software to remix and blend songs together in ways that create something that sounds fresh and new. The possibilities seem endless as you shuffle and reorganize, creating new experiences from familiar elements. With your music collection, you have complete control and immediate access. You can analyze the structure of each song, understand why certain combinations work, and deliberately craft experiences based on your knowledge of what you already possess. This is exactly how your synthetic imagination operates with ideas and experiences. It's your personal library of everything you've learned, seen, heard, and experienced, available for instant recall and recombination. You can be creative within this space, incredibly creative even, producing combinations that surprise and delight, solving problems by connecting pieces in ways you hadn't considered before. But here's the limitation that defines everything. No matter how creatively you arrange your existing music, no matter how ingeniously you blend and remix, you cannot hear a genuinely new song. You cannot access music that exists outside your collection. If a revolutionary new artist is broadcasting their groundbreaking composition on a distant radio station right now, your music collection remains deaf to it. You're limited to what you've already acquired, trapped within the boundaries of your past acquisitions, no matter how vast that collection might be. Your creative imagination, the sixth sense, is the radio receiver built into your mental architecture. When you stop obsessively shuffling through your existing collection and instead tune this receiver to the right frequency, something miraculous happens. Suddenly, you can receive broadcasts from stations you've never heard before, bringing you ideas and melodies from far beyond your personal collection. These aren't remixes of what you already know. They're genuinely new transmissions, carrying information that didn't exist in your mind moments before. But here's what most people don't understand about this radio receiver of the mind. It requires specific conditions to function properly. Just as a physical radio needs to be plugged into a power source, needs to have its antenna properly extended, needs to be tuned to a specific frequency while minimizing static and interference, your creative imagination requires certain conditions to receive these broadcasts from infinite intelligence. You can't just flip it on and expect immediate reception. The signal is always broadcasting, but your ability to receive it depends entirely on the condition of your receiving apparatus. The static that interferes with reception is the constant chatter of the conscious mind, the endless loop of synthetic thinking that creates a wall of noise. When you're frantically trying to force a solution, when you're anxiously recycling the same thoughts, When you're desperately reshuffling your mental music collection, you're generating so much internal noise that the subtle signals from infinite intelligence cannot penetrate. It's like trying to tune into a distant radio station while someone is shouting in your ear. The signal is there, but you cannot hear it through the interference. This is why moments of creative imagination often come when the conscious mind is quiet but alert. The shower, the walk in nature, the moment just before sleep. These are times when the volume of mental static naturally decreases, when the synthetic thinking relaxes its grip, when the receiver can finally pick up the signals that were always there. The ideas that come in these moments often feel different from logical thoughts. They arrive complete, they feel right, in a way that transcends logical validation. They carry with them a sense of having been discovered rather than constructed. Consider how a radio must be tuned to a specific frequency to receive a particular station. If you're tuned to 95.5 FM, you won't hear what's broadcasting on 101.1 FM, no matter how powerful the signal. Similarly, your creative imagination must be tuned to the frequency of the problem you're trying to solve, or the knowledge you're seeking to receive. This tuning happens through intense focus and emotional engagement with your challenge. When you've saturated your mind with a burning desire for a solution, when you've raised your mental vibration through passionate engagement with your purpose, you naturally tune your receiver to the frequency where relevant insights are broadcasting. The power source for this mental radio is emotion, particularly the emotion of burning desire combined with absolute faith. A weak, wishful want produces only weak reception, like a radio running on dying batteries. But when your desire reaches the level of obsession, when your faith in the possibility of a solution becomes unshakable, you're powering your receiver with maximum voltage. This is why Hill emphasized that the sixth sense responds not to casual interest, but to consuming passion. The strength of your emotional broadcast determines the clarity of what you can receive. The antenna of your mental radio is extended through what Hill called the master mind principle, harmonious interaction with other aligned minds. When you engage in deep, purposeful conversation with others who share your vision and vibration, you're not just exchanging ideas from your respective collections. You're creating a group receiving station, a collective antenna that can pick up signals none of you could receive alone. This is why breakthrough insights so often emerge from collaborative sessions when the participants are truly in harmony. The combined receiving power transcends individual limitations. There's another crucial aspect to this radio analogy that explains why so many people fail to activate their creative imagination. A radio receiver must be still to maintain clear reception. If you're constantly moving the dial, constantly adjusting the antenna, constantly changing stations, you never lock onto any signal long enough to receive a clear transmission. Similarly, the creative imagination requires a certain stillness of mind, a patient receptivity that allows the signal to come through clearly. This doesn't mean passive waiting, it means active listening after proper preparation. The broadcasts from infinite intelligence don't follow your schedule or respond to your demands. You can't force a radio station to play your requested song at your chosen moment. You can only tune in and receive what's being broadcast. This is why the creative imagination often delivers its insights at unexpected moments, why the solution you've been seeking might arrive days or weeks after you've done the preparation work. The broadcast schedule of infinite intelligence operates according to laws we don't fully understand, but we can create the conditions for reception. What makes this faculty so powerful is that the broadcasts you receive through creative imagination often contain information you didn't know you needed. Just as you might tune into a radio station for one song and discover an artist who changes your entire musical perspective, the insights that come through the sixth sense often transcend the specific problem you were trying to solve. They reveal connections you hadn't considered, open doors you didn't know existed, provide solutions that address not just the immediate challenge, but the deeper pattern behind it. The ultimate realization is this: you are never truly alone with any problem. No matter how unique your challenge seems, no matter how far you've pushed the boundaries of your existing knowledge, there is always a broadcast available from infinite intelligence that contains the insight you need. The solution exists in the field of infinite possibility, waiting to be received by a properly tuned mind. Your job is not to create the solution from scratch, but to prepare your receiving apparatus to pick up the solution that already exists in potential. The crucial understanding that most people miss, the insight that explains why so many fail to access their creative imagination despite desperate attempts, is that the sixth sense is not a standalone technique you can simply decide to use. It is not a mental trick you can learn in an afternoon, not a meditation method you can master through repetition, not a shortcut that bypasses the need for preparation and development. The sixth sense is the capstone of the temple of achievement, not its foundation. Just as you cannot place a capstone without first building the pillars and walls that support it, you cannot activate the sixth sense without first developing the mental architecture that makes its function possible. This is the revelation that changes everything. The sixth sense is the natural result of mastering the other principles of achievement that Hill outlined. It emerges spontaneously when the right conditions have been created through disciplined application of fundamental principles. Trying to force it into operation without this foundation is like trying to tune a radio that isn't plugged in, adjusting dials on a receiver that has no power source. You can go through the motions, but nothing will happen because the essential conditions for operation haven't been met. Think of how a flower blooms. You cannot force a rosebud to open by prying apart its petals with your fingers. Such force would only damage the delicate structure, destroying the very thing you're trying to bring forth. But when you provide the right conditions, proper soil, adequate water, sufficient sunlight, the right temperature, the flower opens naturally, inevitably, perfectly. The blooming isn't something you do to the flower, it's something that happens when conditions are right. The sixth sense operates according to this same natural law. The mistake most people make is approaching the sixth sense with a mindset of acquisition rather than cultivation. They want to get this power, to have this ability, to use this tool. They read about Tesla's visions or Einstein's insights and immediately want to experience the same thing, so they sit in meditation trying to force visions to appear, or they relax desperately trying to manufacture an aha moment. But this is backwards. The sixth sense cannot be grasped. It can only be cultivated through creating the conditions in which it naturally flourishes. These conditions are not arbitrary or mysterious. Hill identified them through decades of studying individuals who regularly accessed their creative imagination, and what he found was remarkably consistent. Every person who regularly received flashes of inspiration, who solved impossible problems through sudden insight, who accessed knowledge beyond their conscious understanding, had first established certain mental and emotional conditions. They didn't all establish them consciously. Many stumbled upon them through trial and error, but the conditions were always present. The first and most fundamental condition is the development of a burning desire focused on a definite major purpose. The sixth sense doesn't respond to casual curiosity or mild interest. It requires the kind of desire that consumes your thoughts, that wakes you in the middle of the night, that becomes the organizing principle of your entire life. This isn't obsession in the unhealthy sense. It's the kind of focused intensity that creates a magnetic pull, drawing to you the resources, people, and insights needed for achievement. When your entire being is aligned toward a single purpose, you create a clear channel through which intuitive insights can flow. But desire alone isn't enough. The second condition is the development of unwavering faith. Not religious faith necessarily, but the deep conviction that the object of your desire is not only possible, but inevitable. This faith must be cultivated through repeated affirmation and visualization until it becomes stronger than any doubt or fear. Faith is the element that keeps your mental receiver tuned to the frequency of success rather than failure, to the broadcast of solutions rather than problems. Without faith, the static of fear and doubt drowns out the subtle signals of creative imagination. The third essential condition is the accumulation of specialized knowledge related to your definite purpose. This might seem counterintuitive. Why do you need knowledge if you're going to receive insights from beyond your conscious mind? The answer is that the creative imagination doesn't work in a vacuum. It needs raw material to work with, patterns to recognize, connections to make. The more deeply you understand your field, the more sophisticated the insights your creative imagination can deliver. It's like providing a master chef with a fully stocked kitchen versus an empty room. The creativity possible in each situation is vastly different. The fourth condition, and one that many people resist, is the habit of making prompt decisions and changing them slowly, if at all. Indecision creates mental static that interferes with intuitive reception. When you're constantly second-guessing yourself, constantly changing direction, constantly doubting your choices, you create a chaotic mental environment where the subtle signals of the sixth sense cannot be detected. Decisive action, even when imperfect, creates clarity and momentum that allows intuitive insights to emerge. The fifth condition is the organization of effort through definite plans. The creative imagination doesn't replace planning and systematic action. It enhances and transcends them. You must first exhaust the capabilities of your synthetic imagination, pushing it to its limits through organized effort and systematic exploration of your challenge. Only when you've done everything your logical mind can do, when you've explored every avenue available to conscious thought, does the creative imagination have the space to deliver something beyond logic. The sixth condition, one that Hill considered absolutely essential, is the creation of a master-mind alliance, a harmonious coordination of effort between two or more people working toward a definite purpose. When minds come together in perfect harmony, focused on a shared objective, they create a third mind, a collective intelligence that has access to insights none of the individual minds could receive alone. This isn't just collaboration in the ordinary sense, it's a spiritual and mental fusion that amplifies the receiving capacity of all participants. The seventh and perhaps most challenging condition is the transmutation of sexual energy into creative energy. Hill devoted an entire chapter to this principle, recognizing that sexual energy is the most powerful human drive, and that when this energy is redirected toward creative purposes rather than dissipated through physical expression alone, it provides the power source for genius-level thinking. This doesn't mean celibacy or suppression, but rather the conscious channeling of this primal energy toward your definite major purpose. These 7 conditions don't operate independently. They work together synergistically, each amplifying the others. When all 7 are present and properly developed, the sixth sense doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. The mental antenna is extended, the receiver is powered, the tuning is precise, and the static is minimized. In this state, insights from infinite intelligence flow as naturally as water flows downhill. The reason so many people fail to activate their sixth sense is that they try to skip directly to the end result without building the foundation. They want the lightning bolt of inspiration without creating the conditions that attract lightning. They want the harvest without planting and tending the seeds. But nature doesn't work this way, and neither does the mind. The sixth sense is not a gift bestowed arbitrarily on a chosen few. It's a faculty that emerges naturally when the proper mental conditions have been established through disciplined effort. Understanding this changes everything about how you approach the development of your creative imagination. Instead of sitting in frustration, trying to force insights to appear, you focus on creating the conditions that make insights inevitable. Instead of envying those who seem to have natural intuition, you recognize that they've simply created the conditions that allow their intuition to function. Instead of seeing the sixth sense as something mystical and unattainable, you see it as the natural culmination of a process you can deliberately undertake. The beautiful truth is that when you stop trying to force the sixth sense and instead focus on creating the proper conditions, it begins to function spontaneously. You'll find yourself receiving hunches that prove accurate, insights that solve problems you've been struggling with, ideas that seem to come from beyond your conscious mind. These experiences won't be rare exceptions. They'll become increasingly common as you strengthen the conditions that support them. This is why Hill placed the sixth sense as the final principle in his philosophy of achievement. It's not the starting point but the destination, not the seed but the fruit, not the foundation but the capstone. When you understand this proper sequence, You stop making the mistake of trying to access advanced capabilities without developing fundamental capacities. You build your temple of achievement systematically, knowing that when the structure is complete, the capstone of the sixth sense will crown your efforts naturally. The path is clear, but it requires patience and discipline. You must resist the temptation to skip steps, to rush the process, to force what can only emerge naturally. Trust that when you've created the proper conditions through sustained effort and application of principles, your creative imagination will activate. The broadcasts from infinite intelligence are always transmitting. Your job is to systematically develop your capacity to receive them. Now we arrive at the specific conditions that must be present for your sixth sense to activate, the precise environment in which this faculty shifts from dormant potential to active power. The first and most fundamental condition is an emotionally charged purpose that burns within you with such intensity that it reorganizes your entire mental landscape. The broadcasting station of infinite intelligence does not respond to lukewarm desires or casual interests. It requires a burning, all-consuming desire that Hill called your definite major purpose, a want so powerful that it becomes the dominant force in your mental atmosphere, creating a magnetic pull that draws insights and opportunities toward you. This emotional charge is not simply strong feeling, it's a sustained vibration of desire that permeates every aspect of your thinking. When you want something with mild interest, your mind operates at a low frequency, like a radio barely powered, picking up only the strongest local signals. But when your desire reaches the level of magnificent obsession, when it becomes so intense that it colors every thought and influences every decision, your mental frequency rises to a level where it can receive broadcasts from the infinite. This is why all great achievements begin with what seems like unreasonable desire. The unreasonableness is actually the necessary intensity required to activate higher faculties. The emotion must be positive and expansive, not constrictive and fear-based. Fear, worry, and anxiety lower your mental frequency, creating static that blocks reception. But emotions like enthusiasm, love, faith, and burning desire raise your vibration to the level where creative imagination operates. This is why people often receive their best ideas when they're excited about a project, in love with a vision, or consumed by a possibility. The positive emotion doesn't just feel good. It literally tunes your mental receiver to the frequency of creative insight. The second condition builds upon the first. You must combine your emotionally charged purpose with persistent action and unwavering faith. This means exhausting the abilities of your synthetic imagination first, working tirelessly on your problem with absolute conviction that a solution exists and will be revealed. You cannot sit passively waiting for inspiration while doing nothing. The creative imagination rewards effort, not laziness. You must earn your insights through dedicated work, through exploring every logical avenue, through pushing your conscious mind to its absolute limits. This persistent action serves multiple purposes. First, it loads your subconscious mind with all the relevant information about your challenge, providing the raw material from which insights can be formed. Second, it demonstrates to the infinite intelligence that you're serious about your purpose, that you're willing to do whatever it takes to achieve it. Third, and most importantly, the intense focused effort raises your mental vibration to the frequency where creative insights broadcast. It's like revving an engine to reach the RPMs where peak power becomes available. The faith component is equally crucial. You must maintain absolute conviction that the solution you seek exists and will be revealed to you at the right moment. This isn't blind faith. It's based on the understanding that infinite intelligence contains all possible solutions to all possible problems. Your challenge, no matter how unique it seems, has a solution waiting in the infinite field of possibility. Your faith keeps your receiver tuned to the solution frequency rather than the problem frequency. Doubt creates static, faith creates clarity. The third condition, the master-mind alliance, accelerates the activation of creative imagination beyond what any individual can achieve alone. Hill was adamant that stimulating your mind through conversation with other intelligent, harmonious individuals is one of the fastest ways to activate this faculty. But this isn't ordinary conversation or casual brainstorming. A true master-mind alliance requires perfect harmony between participants, shared commitment to a definite purpose, and mutual dedication to each other's success. When two or more minds come together in perfect harmony, focused on a shared objective, something extraordinary happens. The combined mental energy creates a third mind, a collective intelligence that transcends the sum of its parts. Ideas emerge in these sessions that none of the participants could have generated alone. Solutions appear that seem to come from beyond any individual's knowledge or experience. This is because the harmonious combination of minds creates a more powerful receiver, capable of picking up broadcasts that individual minds cannot detect. The mastermind principle works because it eliminates the ego barriers that normally limit reception. When you're truly committed to a shared purpose with others, when you've surrendered personal agenda for collective achievement, you create an egoless space where insights can flow freely. The competitive barriers that normally block creative flow dissolve, replaced by a collaborative field where ideas build upon each other exponentially. Each participant's insights trigger further insights in others, creating an upward spiral of creative revelation. The fourth condition, perhaps the most misunderstood, is what Hill called the let go. After periods of intense, focused work, after you've exhausted your logical mind and pushed your synthetic imagination to its limits, you must completely relax and release the problem. This isn't giving up, it's creating space for the creative imagination to deliver its insights. The conscious mind must step aside for the superconscious to step forward. The analytical noise must quiet for the intuitive signal to be heard. This letting go often feels counterintuitive, especially in a culture that values constant effort and continuous grinding. But the creative imagination doesn't operate under conscious control. It works in the spaces between thoughts, in the gaps between efforts, in the silence between words. When you release your death grip on the problem, when you stop trying to force a solution, you create the mental space where solutions can spontaneously appear. This is why breakthrough insights so often come during relaxation, while walking, showering, or in that twilight state just before sleep. The physiology of this is fascinating. When you're intensely focused on a problem, your brain operates primarily in beta waves, the frequency of active, analytical thinking. But when you relax while remaining alert, your brain shifts to alpha waves, the frequency where the conscious and subconscious minds can communicate. In this alpha state, insights from the creative imagination can bridge into conscious awareness. The solution that was blocked by beta wave analytical thinking can now flow through the alpha wave gateway. The timing of the let go is crucial. You can't let go before you've done the work. That's not relaxation, it's avoidance. The creative imagination rewards effort, not shortcuts. You must first saturate your mind with the problem, explore every angle, exhaust every logical possibility. Only then, when you've done everything your conscious mind can do, should you release and create space for superconscious insight. The let go is the reward for effort, not a substitute for it. The let go must be genuine, not forced. You can't fake relaxation while secretly maintaining mental tension about the problem. The release must be complete, a true surrender of the problem to infinite intelligence, trusting that the solution will appear at the perfect moment. This requires faith, patience, and the understanding that the creative imagination operates on its own timeline, not yours. The solution might come in 5 minutes or 5 days, but it will come if you've properly prepared and genuinely released. There's an art to maintaining alertness during the let-go phase. You must be relaxed but not unconscious, released but not disconnected. It's like being a cat lounging in the sun, completely relaxed but instantly ready to respond when something significant happens. This state of relaxed alertness is where the magic happens, where the veil between conscious and superconscious becomes permeable, where insights can slip through from the infinite into your awareness. The final crucial element is immediate action when an insight arrives. When an idea or hunch flashes into your mind from the creative imagination, you must act on it immediately. Hill stressed this point repeatedly. Failure to act on these flashes of insight causes the faculty to weaken, like a muscle that atrophies from disuse. The creative imagination is strengthened by trust and weakened by doubt. When you receive an insight and immediately act upon it, you send a signal to infinite intelligence that you're a worthy receiver, that you can be trusted with valuable broadcasts. This immediate action doesn't mean recklessly following every random thought. Insights from the creative imagination have a distinct quality. They feel different from ordinary thoughts. They often come with a sense of certainty, a feeling of rightness that transcends logical validation. They may seem to come from outside yourself, arriving fully formed rather than being constructed piece by piece. When you learn to recognize these qualities, you can distinguish genuine intuitive insights from random mental noise. The action you take doesn't have to be massive, it just has to be immediate. If you receive an insight about a business idea, immediately write it down in detail. If you get a hunch about calling someone, make the call right away. If a solution to a problem flashes into your mind, begin implementing it immediately, even if just in a small way. This immediate response keeps the channel open, maintains the connection to infinite intelligence, and strengthens your capacity to receive future insights. The more you act on genuine insights from your creative imagination, the stronger and clearer the faculty becomes. It's like developing any skill. Practice makes perfect. Each time you successfully receive and act upon an intuitive insight, you strengthen the neural pathways involved, making future reception easier and clearer. Eventually, accessing your creative imagination becomes as natural as accessing your logical mind, and you operate with both faculties in perfect harmony. Understanding the conditions for activating your sixth sense is only half the equation. You must also recognize the fatal mistakes that prevent this faculty from functioning, the common pitfalls that trap even sincere seekers in perpetual frustration. The first and most seductive mistake is trying to skip the line, attempting to access genius-level insights without laying the proper groundwork. This manifests as sitting in meditation for hours, desperately hoping a brilliant idea will appear, without having done the hard work of deep focus and research first. It's the mental equivalent of expecting to win a marathon without training, hoping that desire alone will carry you across the finish line. This mistake stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of how the creative imagination operates. People read about Tesla's visions or Einstein's revelations and assume these insights came from nowhere, appearing spontaneously in minds that were simply open to receiving them. They don't see the years of intense study that preceded these breakthroughs, the thousands of hours spent loading the mind with specialized knowledge, the countless failed attempts that prepared the ground for the moment of illumination. They want the lightning bolt without building the lightning rod, the harvest without planting the seeds, the symphony without learning to read music. The sixth sense is the reward for effort, not a substitute for it. When you try to bypass the necessary preparation, you're like someone trying to tune into a specific radio station without knowing its frequency. You might occasionally pick up random signals, but they'll be weak, distorted, and irrelevant to your purpose. The profound insights that solve impossible problems don't come to unprepared minds. They come to minds that have been thoroughly prepared through disciplined study and persistent effort, minds that have earned the right to receive advanced knowledge. Consider what happens when you attempt to meditate your way to breakthrough insights without proper preparation. You sit in silence, trying to empty your mind, hoping something profound will fill the void. But what fills an empty, unprepared mind is usually just more emptiness or worse, random mental noise masquerading as insight. Without the foundation of specialized knowledge, without the context of a definite major purpose, without the magnetic pull of burning desire, your meditation becomes just another form of mental wandering, producing nothing of value. The preparation phase isn't just about accumulating information. It's about creating the mental framework that allows creative imagination to function. When you deeply study your field, you're not just learning facts. You're building the conceptual structure that insights can attach to. When you exhaust your logical thinking on a problem, you're not just spinning your wheels. You're creating the tension that breakthrough insights release. The preparation is integral to the revelation, not separate from it. The second fatal mistake is even more insidious, mistaking fear for intuition. This confusion has derailed countless individuals who genuinely want to develop their sixth sense, but cannot distinguish between authentic intuitive insights and the projections of their own anxieties. A true hunch from the creative imagination has specific qualities. It's often quiet, calm, and arrives with a sense of certainty that doesn't require emotional validation. It feels right in a way that transcends logical explanation, carrying with it a quality of completion and coherence. Fear-based thoughts, on the other hand, are loud, anxious, and emotionally charged. They come with urgency, with pressure, with a quality of desperation that genuine intuition never carries. Fear speaks in absolutes. You must do this now or disaster will strike. Intuition speaks in possibilities. This path is open to you. Fear contracts your awareness, making you feel trapped and pressured. Intuition expands your awareness, showing you options you hadn't considered. The confusion between fear and intuition is particularly dangerous because fear is such a powerful emotion that it can feel like important guidance. When your fear tells you not to take a risk, not to pursue an opportunity, not to trust a person, it can feel like protective wisdom. But fear-based thinking comes from the ego's desire for safety and control, not from the infinite intelligence that sees beyond current circumstances. Fear keeps you trapped in the familiar. Intuition guides you toward growth. Learning to distinguish between fear and intuition requires developing emotional awareness and practicing discernment. When a thought or feeling arises that seems like guidance, examine its quality. Does it make you feel expanded or contracted? Does it come with peace or anxiety? Does it open possibilities or close them? True intuition, even when it guides you away from something, does so with a sense of clarity and peace, not panic and contraction. The third fatal mistake, perhaps the most tragic, is receiving a brilliant insight from your creative imagination and then allowing your logical mind to talk you out of it. This is the ultimate self-sabotage, the moment when you're handed the key to your breakthrough and choose instead to throw it away. The insight arrives, often suddenly and with perfect clarity, but then your synthetic imagination starts its analysis. That's too bold, it says. That's never been done before. That doesn't follow conventional wisdom. That seems too simple. That can't possibly work. This mistake is so common because we've been trained our entire lives to trust logic over intuition, to value the familiar over the revolutionary, to choose the safe over the transformative. When an insight from the creative imagination contradicts conventional thinking, which it often does since conventional thinking hasn't solved your problem, your logical mind rebels. It marshals all its arguments, all its past experiences, all its learned limitations, to convince you that the insight must be wrong. The tragedy is that insights from the creative imagination often seem too simple, too elegant, too perfect to be true. They bypass the complexity that the logical mind expects, offering solutions that seem to come from a different dimension of thinking. The wheel was too simple. The idea that the Earth revolves around the sun was too radical. The notion that invisible waves could carry voices across vast distances was too fantastical. Every breakthrough insight seems impossible until it's proven possible, seems wrong until it's proven right. When you receive an insight from your creative imagination and let your logical mind veto it, you're not just missing one opportunity, you're training your intuitive faculty to shut down, teaching it that its insights aren't valued or trusted. Each time you ignore or dismiss a genuine intuitive insight, the channel of communication weakens. Eventually, the insights stop coming altogether, and you're left with only your logical mind, wondering why you never receive the flashes of genius that others seem to experience. The logical mind's resistance to creative imagination isn't malicious, it's protective. The logical mind's job is to keep you safe, to maintain stability, to avoid risks that could lead to failure or embarrassment. It sees the unconventional insight as a threat to the established order, a risk to your security and reputation. But breakthrough success never comes from playing it safe, and revolutionary insights never conform to conventional thinking. If you want to access the power of your sixth sense, you must be willing to trust insights that your logical mind cannot validate. This doesn't mean blindly following every random thought or recklessly acting on every hunch. It means developing the discrimination to recognize genuine insights from your creative imagination and having the courage to act on them despite logical objections. It means understanding that your logical mind, valuable as it is for many tasks, is not equipped to evaluate insights that come from beyond logic. It's like asking a fish to evaluate the experience of flying. It simply doesn't have the framework to understand what it's examining. The pattern of these mistakes reveals a common theme. They all involve either trying to bypass the natural process or rejecting its results. Whether you're trying to skip preparation, confusing fear with intuition, or dismissing genuine insights, you're interfering with the natural flow of creative imagination. The path to activating your sixth sense isn't about forcing or controlling. It's about preparing properly and then trusting the process, creating the right conditions, and then accepting what emerges. Among all the techniques Hill discovered for consciously stimulating the creative imagination, one stood supreme in his personal practice, his invisible counsel technique. This was not merely a mental exercise or visualization practice. It was Hill's primary method for accessing the sixth sense before making major decisions or solving complex problems. He used it consistently for years, refining it through practice, and credited it with providing insights that shaped his entire philosophy of success. Understanding this technique opens a doorway to deliberate activation of your creative imagination. The invisible counsel technique involves creating an imaginary board of advisors composed of individuals whose qualities, knowledge, and achievements you deeply admire. Hill's personal counsel included figures like Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Napoleon, Emerson, and Ford, each chosen for specific qualities he wanted to develop within himself. Every night before sleep, he would hold imaginary meetings with this counsel, presenting them with challenges and questions and listening for their guidance. What began as conscious imagination gradually evolved into something far more profound. The power of this technique lies not in pretending that historical figures are actually communicating with you, but in using focused imagination to access levels of wisdom within your own mind that normal thinking cannot reach. When you deeply study an individual's life, thoughts, and methods, you internalize their patterns of thinking. When you then imagine consulting with them, you're accessing these internalized patterns in a way that transcends your normal limitations. You're thinking with their mental models, seeing through their perspectives, accessing wisdom you've absorbed but cannot consciously articulate. Hill discovered that after months of practicing this technique, the imaginary figures began to develop distinct personalities and would offer insights he hadn't consciously created. Lincoln would speak of patience and justice, Napoleon of strategy and ambition, Edison of persistence and innovation. These weren't hallucinations or delusions. Hill was fully aware he was engaging with aspects of his own mind, but by personifying different modes of thinking, he could access insights that his normal consciousness couldn't generate. The technique works because it bypasses the ego limitations that normally restrict our thinking. When you imagine receiving advice from someone you deeply respect, you're more open to insights that challenge your assumptions. Your ego can accept revolutionary ideas from Einstein that it would reject if they seemed to come from yourself. By attributing insights to admired figures, you create a psychological space where breakthrough thinking can emerge without triggering the defensive mechanisms of the logical mind. To implement this technique effectively, you must first choose your council members carefully. Select individuals whose achievements inspire you, whose thinking patterns you want to emulate, whose expertise covers the areas where you need guidance. Study these individuals deeply, read their biographies, their own writings, understand their methods and philosophies. The more thoroughly you understand them, the more accurately your imagination can simulate their thinking patterns. The setting and ritual matter more than you might expect. Hill conducted his council meetings in the same chair, at the same time each night, creating a ritual that signaled to his subconscious that he was entering a special mental state. He would close his eyes and visualize a specific meeting room where his council gathered. The consistency of the ritual created a kind of mental anchor, making it easier to enter the receptive state where creative imagination functions. During the council meetings, Present real challenges and questions, not vague wonderings. Be specific about what you need to know, what problem you're trying to solve, what decision you're facing. Then, and this is crucial, listen more than you speak. After presenting your challenge, imagine each council member responding from their unique perspective. Don't force their responses. Allow them to emerge naturally from your deep understanding of their thinking patterns. What makes this technique particularly powerful is that it combines multiple activation conditions for the sixth sense. It requires the focused concentration that raises mental vibration. It involves the emotional engagement of connecting with figures you admire. It creates a form of mastermind alliance, even if the other minds are imaginatively constructed, and it provides a structured way to let go and allow insights to emerge without forcing them. Hill warned that this technique requires patience and consistency to yield results. In the beginning, the council meetings might feel entirely constructed, like you're just talking to yourself. But with consistent practice, something shifts. The imaginary figures begin to surprise you with their insights. They offer perspectives you hadn't considered, solutions you couldn't have logically derived. This isn't magic. It's your creative imagination finding a structured channel through which to deliver insights. The technique also serves as training wheels for recognizing and trusting intuitive insights. When an insight comes through an imagined council member, it's easier to recognize its value and act upon it than when the same insight seems to come from nowhere. Over time, as you develop confidence in the insights received through your council, you become better at recognizing and trusting insights that come through other channels. Beyond the invisible council, Hill identified several other methods for stimulating the creative imagination. One powerful approach is the practice of asking yourself specific questions just before sleep and immediately upon waking. In these twilight states between sleeping and waking, the barrier between conscious and subconscious is at its thinnest. Questions asked in these states often receive answers that come as sudden insights hours or days later. Another technique involves what Hill called sitting for ideas, deliberately creating periods of relaxed receptivity after intense work. This isn't passive waiting but active listening, maintaining a state of relaxed alertness while holding your challenge lightly in awareness. It's like peripheral vision for the mind. You're aware of the problem without staring directly at it, allowing solutions to slip in from the edges of consciousness. Hill also emphasized the power of solitude in nature for activating the creative imagination. He would often take long walks alone, not trying to solve problems but simply being present with natural beauty while maintaining an awareness of his definite major purpose. The combination of physical movement, natural beauty, and mental receptivity created ideal conditions for intuitive insights to emerge. The use of music as a stimulant for creative imagination was another of Hill's discoveries. Certain types of music, particularly classical compositions with complex harmonies, can shift brain states in ways that facilitate intuitive reception. The key is finding music that elevates your emotional state without demanding conscious attention, creating an emotional atmosphere where insights can flourish. Hill was adamant about one crucial point. Whatever technique you use, you must act immediately on the insights you receive. He kept a notebook beside his bed, another in his pocket, always ready to capture insights the moment they arrived. He would often rise in the middle of the night to record an idea, knowing that insights from the creative imagination are like dreams, vivid in the moment but quick to fade if not immediately captured. The master key to all these techniques is understanding that you're not trying to create insights through effort, but creating conditions where insights can emerge naturally. You're not pushing the river, you're removing the dams that block its flow. Every technique is simply a different way of creating the mental and emotional conditions where the sixth sense naturally activates. The principles Hill discovered through decades of observation and experimentation now find remarkable validation in modern neuroscience, particularly in research on the incubation period of creativity. Scientists have identified a phenomenon that maps perfectly onto Hill's description of the creative imagination. After a period of intense focus on a problem, when the conscious mind steps back and enters a state of relaxed awareness, the brain often produces sudden insights that seem to come from nowhere. This isn't mysticism. It's measurable brain activity that follows predictable patterns. When you engage in intense problem solving, you're primarily using what neuroscientists call the executive attention network, centered in the prefrontal cortex. This network is excellent at logical analysis, sequential thinking, and conscious manipulation of information. It's the neural substrate of what Hill called the synthetic imagination, the faculty that rearranges existing knowledge into new combinations. Brain scans show this network lighting up during deliberate problem-solving, consuming significant metabolic resources as it works through possibilities systematically. But here's where it gets fascinating. When you stop actively trying to solve the problem and enter a state of relaxed awareness, your brain doesn't stop working on the challenge. Instead, it shifts to what researchers call the default mode network, a collection of brain regions that become active when you're not focused on the outside world. This network, discovered only in the last 2 decades through advanced brain imaging, operates below conscious awareness, making connections between disparate pieces of information that the logical mind would never think to connect. The default mode network is like a vast underground computer, processing information in parallel rather than sequentially, exploring millions of potential connections simultaneously. It's not bound by the rules of logic that constrain the executive attention network. It can connect memories from different times, combine concepts from unrelated domains, and recognize patterns that conscious analysis would miss. This is the neural mechanism underlying what Hill called the creative imagination, the faculty that delivers insights that seem to come from beyond personal experience. Studies have shown that the moment of insight, what researchers call the aha moment or eureka effect, involves a sudden burst of gamma waves in the brain, particularly in the right temporal lobe. This gamma burst represents the moment when a solution discovered by the default mode network breaks through into conscious awareness. Brain scans can actually detect this burst about 300 milliseconds before the person consciously realizes they've had an insight. The solution exists in the brain before you're aware of it, exactly as Hill described the creative imagination delivering complete insights rather than building them piece by piece. The research reveals something else that validates Hill's observations: the importance of loading the brain with information before the incubation period. Studies show that insights don't come from nowhere. They emerge from the recombination of existing knowledge in novel ways. The more relevant information you've loaded into your brain through intensive study, the more material the default mode network has to work with during incubation. This is why Hill emphasized that the sixth sense rewards effort, not laziness. You must first saturate your brain with relevant information before the creative imagination can deliver transcendent insights. The neuroscience also explains why certain conditions facilitate creative imagination. Alpha brainwaves, which increase during relaxed awareness, seem to serve as a bridge between the conscious and unconscious processing systems. This is why insights often come during activities that promote alpha waves, walking, showering, or the moments just before sleep. These activities create the neural conditions where insights from unconscious processing can cross the threshold into conscious awareness. Research on mind wandering provides another piece of the puzzle. Scientists have discovered that when your mind wanders in a relaxed but alert state, it's not idle. It's actively exploring what researchers call the adjacent possible, the space of solutions that are one step away from current knowledge. This exploration happens below conscious awareness, following associative links that logical thinking wouldn't pursue. This is exactly what Hill described when he talked about the creative imagination accessing knowledge beyond conscious experience. The phenomenon of cognitive offloading also supports Hill's principles. When you stop trying to hold all aspects of a problem in conscious awareness, when you let go, as Hill advised, you free up cognitive resources that can be redirected toward pattern recognition and insight generation. The brain can only consciously process a limited amount of information at once, but unconscious processing has vastly greater capacity. By releasing conscious control, you allow this greater capacity to engage with your challenge. Studies on group creativity validate Hill's mastermind principle with stunning clarity. Research shows that when individuals work together in a state of psychological safety and shared purpose, They generate insights that none of them could produce alone. Brain scans of people engaged in collaborative creativity show synchronized neural activity. Their brains literally begin to operate in harmony. This synchronized activity correlates with breakthrough insights and creative solutions. The third mind that Hill described isn't metaphorical. It's a measurable phenomenon of neural synchronization. The neuroscience of meditation provides further validation. Long-term meditators show increased connectivity between brain regions, particularly between areas associated with attention and areas associated with introspection and self-awareness. This increased connectivity appears to facilitate the kind of insight generation Hill associated with the sixth sense. It's not that meditation directly produces insights, but that it creates the neural conditions where insights can more easily emerge. Research on transient hypofrontality offers another fascinating connection. During certain states, including flow states, some forms of meditation, and moments just before sleep, activity in the prefrontal cortex decreases. This reduction in activity in the brain's executive region correlates with increased creativity and insight. It's as if the logical, critical part of the brain needs to quiet down for the intuitive, insightful part to speak up. This maps perfectly onto Hill's observation that the creative imagination functions when the conscious mind is quieted. The study of savant syndrome provides extreme examples of what happens when the balance between logical and intuitive processing shifts dramatically. Some individuals with savant syndrome, often after brain injury that reduces left hemisphere logical processing, develop extraordinary creative or intuitive abilities. They can solve complex mathematical problems instantly, create elaborate artistic works without training, or access information they seemingly shouldn't know. While extreme, these cases demonstrate that the human brain contains capabilities far beyond what normal conscious processing can access. The research on prospective memory, the ability to remember to do something in the future, reveals another mechanism that might underlie the sixth sense. When you plant an intention deeply in your mind, like Hill's definite major purpose, your brain continues to monitor for relevant information and opportunities even when you're not consciously thinking about it. This unconscious monitoring can produce sudden recognition of opportunities or solutions that seem to come from nowhere, but are actually the result of continuous unconscious processing. The neuroscience of sleep and dreams provides additional validation. During REM sleep, the brain makes particularly creative connections, combining information in ways that waking logic would never allow. Many scientific breakthroughs have come through dreams. Kekulé's benzene ring, Mendeleev's periodic table, Elias Howe's sewing machine needle. These aren't random occurrences, but examples of the brain's continued processing of intensely studied problems during altered states of consciousness. Hill's advice to ask questions before sleep and listen for answers upon waking aligns perfectly with what we now know about sleep-dependent memory consolidation and insight generation. The emerging field of quantum biology even suggests mechanisms that might explain some of the more mysterious aspects of intuition and the sixth sense. Quantum coherence in microtubules within neurons might allow for information processing that transcends classical computation. While highly speculative, this research suggests that the brain might have access to information processing capabilities that we're only beginning to understand. What's remarkable is that Hill, without access to any of this neuroscience, accurately described the conditions and practices that modern research shows facilitate insight and creativity. His observations, based on decades of studying successful individuals, align remarkably with what brain imaging and cognitive science now reveal. The sixth sense isn't supernatural. It's a natural capability of the human brain that operates according to discoverable principles. The validation of Hill's principles extends beyond laboratory neuroscience into the documented experiences of history's greatest innovators and thinkers. The famous stories we often dismiss as mere anecdotes or exaggerations reveal a consistent pattern that matches Hill's description of the creative imagination at work. Nikola Tesla, perhaps the most dramatic example, didn't just use intuition occasionally. He relied on it as his primary method of invention. Tesla claimed that his inventions came to him in complete, vivid flashes of insight, so detailed that he could mentally test and refine them before ever building physical prototypes. Tesla described seeing his alternating current motor in a vision while walking in a Budapest park, reciting poetry. The complete design appeared in his mind instantaneously, not as a vague concept, but as a fully functional machine with every detail visible. He could mentally disassemble it, examine each part, and watch it operate. This wasn't gradual construction through logical thinking. It was complete reception of complex information that his conscious mind hadn't developed. For weeks before this vision, Tesla had been obsessively focused on the problem of creating a practical AC motor, loading his mind with every relevant piece of information, exhausting his logical faculties, trying to solve the challenge. The pattern is unmistakable. Intense preparation followed by a moment of relaxation when the complete solution arrived. This is exactly what Hill described. The synthetic imagination pushes to its limits, then the creative imagination delivers the breakthrough. Tesla's experience wasn't unique in its pattern, only in its dramatic clarity. The same sequence appears repeatedly in the stories of great discoveries, though often in subtler forms. Consider the legendary moment when Archimedes shouted "Eureka!" in his bath. This wasn't just a clever man having a good idea while relaxing. Archimedes had been tasked by King Hero to determine whether a crown was pure gold without damaging it, a seemingly impossible problem. He had applied every logical approach, every known method of analysis, pushing his considerable intellect to its absolute limits. The solution came not through further logical analysis, but through a sudden insight, while his conscious mind was relaxed, focused on the simple act of bathing. The displacement principle that revolutionized physics arrived complete, its implications immediately clear. Auguste Kekulé's discovery of the structure of benzene follows the same pattern with remarkable precision. After years of intensive study trying to understand how carbon and hydrogen atoms could arrange themselves in benzene, Kekulé dozed by his fireplace and saw a vision of atoms dancing, forming chains that moved like snakes. Then one snake seized its own tail, forming a ring. Kekulé awoke with the complete understanding that benzene had a ring structure, a configuration that logical analysis hadn't suggested because it violated the known rules of chemical bonding at the time. What makes these stories more than mere anecdotes is their consistency and the fact that the individuals involved often described their experiences in detail. They weren't claiming magical powers or divine intervention. They were describing a mental phenomenon that felt distinctly different from normal thinking. Insights that arrived complete rather than being constructed, solutions that seemed to come from outside their conscious minds, knowledge that transcended what they consciously knew. Einstein's development of special relativity provides a particularly well-documented example. His breakthrough came not from mathematical analysis, but from what he called a thought experiment, imagining himself riding on a beam of light. This wasn't logical deduction. It was an intuitive leap that revealed the relationship between space and time. Einstein spent years afterward working out the mathematics to prove what his creative imagination had shown him in an instant. He famously said, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. The mathematician Henri Poincaré provided one of the most detailed accounts of creative imagination at work. He described working intensively on a mathematical problem for weeks without success, then boarding a bus for a geological excursion. As he stepped onto the bus without any conscious thought about mathematics, the solution appeared complete in his mind. He knew with absolute certainty it was correct, though it took weeks to verify through logical proof. Poincaré noted that this pattern repeated throughout his career. Intensive work followed by a period of rest, then sudden illumination. These aren't just stories from the distant past. Contemporary innovators describe similar experiences. The co-founder of Google, Larry Page, credits the idea for the PageRank algorithm to a vivid dream. He woke in the middle of the night with the complete concept clear in his mind and spent the rest of the night frantically writing it down. Paul McCartney heard the entire melody of Yesterday in a dream, so complete that he worried he had unconsciously plagiarized it. Jack Nicklaus fixed his golf swing through a dream where he saw himself using a different grip. What unites all these examples is that they follow the pattern Hill identified: intense focus on a problem, saturation with relevant information, exhaustion of logical approaches, then a period of relaxation or altered consciousness when the complete solution arrives. These individuals weren't passive recipients of random inspiration. They had prepared their minds through intensive work, created the conditions for creative imagination to function, then remained open to receiving insights when they came. The consistency of these accounts across cultures, centuries, and fields of endeavor suggests a universal human capability rather than rare genius. The difference between those who regularly experience such insights and those who don't isn't the presence or absence of the faculty. It's whether the conditions for its operation have been created. Every human brain has the hardware for creative imagination. Not everyone runs the software that activates it. Modern entrepreneurs and innovators who consciously apply these principles report similar experiences. They describe solutions appearing during morning runs, breakthrough strategies emerging during meditation retreats, revolutionary product ideas arriving in the shower. These aren't coincidences or lucky accidents. They're predictable results of creating the conditions Hill identified: intense preparation, emotional engagement with a definite purpose, and periods of relaxed receptivity. The pattern holds even in fields that seem purely logical. Mathematicians regularly report that their most significant proofs come through intuitive leaps rather than systematic deduction. They see the truth of a theorem instantly, then spend months or years developing the formal proof. The creative imagination reveals the destination. The synthetic imagination builds the road to reach it. This is why mathematical genius often seems mysterious. It's not just superior logical processing, but the ability to receive insights that transcend logic. We have reached the summit of understanding, the point where all the principles converge into a single, powerful realization. The sixth sense is the bridge between the finite mind of man and the infinite intelligence of the universe. This is not metaphorical language or mystical speculation. It is the most practical truth you will ever encounter. When you successfully activate your creative imagination, you are literally connecting your individual consciousness to a vast field of intelligence that contains all knowledge, all solutions, all possibilities. You become a receiver tuned to the frequency of infinite wisdom, capable of downloading insights that transcend the limitations of personal experience and logical deduction. This bridge is not built of faith alone, but of systematic preparation, emotional intensity, and disciplined practice. Every principle Hill identified, every condition we've explored, serves to strengthen this bridge, to make the connection clearer and more reliable. When you align your entire being with a definite major purpose, when you saturate your mind with specialized knowledge, when you maintain unwavering faith in the face of temporary defeat, you are constructing a pathway between your finite capabilities and infinite resources. The sixth sense is not the beginning of this construction, it is its completion, the moment when the bridge becomes functional and traffic can flow. The implications of this are staggering. It means you are never truly alone with any problem, no matter how complex or unprecedented it might seem. Behind every challenge you face, there exists a solution in the infinite field of possibility, waiting to be received by a properly prepared mind. The solution doesn't need to be created. It already exists in potential. Your job is not to manufacture answers through sheer force of will, but to create the conditions where answers can flow to you naturally. This shift in understanding transforms everything about how you approach problems, how you view your capabilities, and how you navigate challenges. When you cultivate your sixth sense, you gain access to what might be called the universal problem-solving network. Every breakthrough that has ever occurred, every solution that has ever been discovered, every innovation that has ever emerged came through this same channel. The inventors, artists, entrepreneurs, and leaders who changed the world didn't possess different brains than you. They simply learned to use their brains differently. They discovered how to shift from purely logical processing to intuitive reception, from forcing solutions to allowing them to emerge. This bridge to infinite intelligence means that your potential is literally limitless. The only boundaries are those imposed by your preparation, your faith, and your willingness to act on the insights you receive. When you truly understand this, you stop seeing yourself as an isolated individual struggling against overwhelming odds. You begin to see yourself as a conscious participant in an infinite creative process, a co-creator with universal intelligence, capable of accessing whatever knowledge or insight your purpose requires. You have a genius within you. This is not motivational rhetoric, but a statement of biological and spiritual fact. This genius does not reside in your logical mind, in your ability to analyze and deduce, in your capacity to remember and recombine. It exists in the quiet space between your thoughts, in the gap between one mental process and another, in the silence that emerges when the noise of forced thinking finally stops. This is where your true power lies, waiting patiently for you to discover it, to trust it, to give it room to express itself in your life. Stop trying to solve your greatest problems with your current level of thinking. Einstein understood this when he said that problems cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness that created them. Your logical mind, powerful as it is, operates within a closed system of known information and established patterns. It can optimize within these boundaries, but cannot transcend them. It's like trying to escape a maze by running faster through the same corridors. Increased effort doesn't equal breakthrough insight. The solution isn't to think harder, but to think differently, to shift from the level of synthetic imagination to creative imagination. The work must come first. This cannot be emphasized enough. Load your mind with relevant information, exhaust your logical faculties, push your synthetic imagination to its absolute limits. This is not wasted effort even when it doesn't produce the solution. Every hour of focused work, every failed attempt, every logical dead end is preparing your mind for the moment of breakthrough. You are creating the pressure that insight will release, building the tension that revelation will resolve, establishing the conditions that make creative imagination inevitable rather than accidental. But then, and this is where most people fail, you must learn to listen. After the work, after the effort, after the logical exhaustion, you must create space for reception. This listening is not passive waiting, but active receptivity, a state of relaxed alertness where you're available to insights without grasping for them. It's like becoming a perfectly still lake that can accurately reflect the sky. Any disturbance in the water distorts the reflection. Any mental agitation blocks the insight. The answer you seek is broadcasting to you right now. This is the extraordinary truth that changes everything. At this very moment, the solution to your most pressing problem exists in the infinite field of possibility, transmitting on a frequency your mind can receive. The broadcast never stops, only your ability to receive it varies. Every moment of frustration when you can't find an answer is not because the answer doesn't exist, but because your receiver isn't properly tuned. The static of fear, doubt, and forced thinking is drowning out the signal. Your genius is not a rare gift bestowed on a chosen few, but a natural faculty that has been allowed to atrophy through disuse and misunderstanding. Society has trained you to value only logical thinking, to trust only what can be proven through analysis, to dismiss intuitive insights as unreliable hunches. This training has severed your connection to your greatest power, like teaching someone to walk only on their hands while ignoring their legs. You've been operating at a fraction of your mental capacity, using only the tools that education has validated, while ignoring the faculties that true achievement requires. To reclaim your genius, you must be willing to trust what you cannot logically validate, to act on insights that seem to come from beyond your conscious mind, to value intuition as much as analysis. This requires courage because every insight from your creative imagination challenges the supremacy of logical thinking. Every time you act on an intuitive insight, you're declaring that there's a form of knowing that transcends logic, a source of wisdom beyond your personal experience. The time for theory has ended. The moment for action has arrived. I propose to you the Hunch Log Challenge, a practical experiment that will prove the reality of your sixth sense beyond any doubt. For 1 week, just 7 days, you will deliberately create the conditions for creative imagination to function and document what emerges. This is not a passive exercise, but an active engagement with the principles you've learned, a real-world test of Hill's discoveries that will transform your understanding of your own capabilities. The challenge has 2 essential components that must be executed with total commitment. First, you must engage in a period of deep, focused work on your primary goal each day. This is not casual thinking or worried rumination, but intensive, systematic engagement with your definite major purpose. Load your mind with relevant information, explore every angle of your challenge, push your logical thinking to its absolute limits, create the pressure, build the tension, exhaust your synthetic imagination completely. This preparation phase should last at least 2 hours of concentrated effort. Second, immediately following this intensive work, you must create a period of relaxation and listening. This is not rest as escape, but rest as reception. Take a walk in nature, sit in quiet meditation, engage in gentle physical activity that occupies your body while freeing your mind. Maintain an awareness of your challenge without forcing thought about it. Hold it lightly in consciousness, like a question floating in space, available but not pressed. This receptive phase should last at least 30 minutes, though insights may come hours or even days later. Throughout the week, keep a dedicated log of any hunches, intuitions, or sudden insights that appear. Record everything, no matter how small or seemingly irrelevant: the urge to call someone, the feeling that you should read a particular book, the sudden solution to a problem you weren't consciously considering. Note the time, the circumstances, and the quality of the insight. Pay special attention to ideas that seem to come from outside your normal thinking patterns, solutions that arrive complete rather than being built piece by piece. Here's the crucial element that transforms this from an interesting exercise into a life-changing practice. You must take immediate action on at least one significant hunch during this week. When an insight arrives that feels important, that carries the distinctive quality of creative imagination, you must act on it immediately. Make the phone call, start the project, implement the solution, take the risk. This action validates the insight, strengthens the faculty, and proves to both your conscious and subconscious minds that you're serious about developing this capability. The challenge is designed to break through a lifetime of conditioning that has taught you to ignore or dismiss intuitive insights. By consciously creating conditions for creative imagination and documenting its operation, you're bringing scientific rigor to spiritual faculty. You're proving to yourself that the sixth sense is not wishful thinking, but a reliable mental capability that operates according to discoverable laws. Most importantly, you're beginning to rebuild the bridge between your finite mind and infinite intelligence that modern life has allowed to decay. If you are ready to unlock your inner genius, if you're prepared to discover capabilities within yourself that you never knew existed, then subscribe to the Master's Legacy and activate all notifications. This is not just another self-help channel offering feel-good platitudes and recycled advice. This is a systematic exploration of the deepest principles of human achievement, the forgotten wisdom of the Masters who understood how consciousness really works. Each video builds upon the last, creating a complete architecture of understanding that will transform not just what you know, but how you think. It's time to tune in to a higher power, the power that has always existed within you, waiting for you to discover it, trust it, and use it to achieve everything you've dreamed possible.